That team was also a
wait.
disaster.
I didn't know that you were on Contendies.
Yeah,
Oh,
I resigned. I resigned.
that the
That team
season
was
we
a
played you
dumpster
all?
fire.
Maybe we're just coming off a high in gaming, because let's be real for a second here. I would say 2016 to 2020.
The thing with Widowmaker, I think, is like the problem with all your solutions, while they definitely provide like fair counterplay, they make the character so hit or miss, more so than she already is, right? Like, can you imagine like a bronze Widowmaker with all those things?
Oh, you
Like,
can't play the hero.
you
I think
just
Bronze
can't play the
Widows
character.
already can't play the character, which kind of sucks.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
First of all, like, dude, thanks for coming on. It's always fun. I feel like you and I, anytime we talk, it's not only is it productive, but it always goes some direction that you and I never would have expected from the beginning, you know?
Yeah, always.
And that's fun. And it's nice and I think you and I both struggle with this. Me particularly in general, because, you know, I tend to get a little heated sometimes. You know, it's hard to find nuanced conversation on the internet nowadays. It seems like everybody is so...
For sure.
Not just dead set, but it just seems like a lot of conversations are never going to go anywhere. So it's always fun, and I think people like listening to ones that go well. So welcome to the locker room. You're the first guest that I've had on, I think,
I
next
appreciate
month. And if you do want to come on more, I think next month I'm going to have my buddy Tyler come on, who's a starting pitcher for the Mets. He's a Doomfist player. He had to wait for the offseason, unfortunately. There's a lot of pro athletes who actually play Overwatch. I almost hopped on with like half the Brewers outfield one time because they were playing with Trevor, and they all just messed around on BAP and like diamond or plat or gold, and it's surprising how many athletes. Because I mean, you get this growing up because we gamed and you played. What sports did you play? You played football, right?
I played football and baseball. Yeah.
Football. Oh, okay. What position did you play in baseball?
I was catcher.
Dude, catcher is one of the people don't know this, and I know you do obviously, but you know, for all you baseball fans out there, or I guess people who aren't baseball fans out there, the catcher is like you're calling all the shots. Like you're like you might think it's the picture out there, but really the catcher is the brain of the team. So I can see you being a good catcher. Your knees ever give out on you?
No. When you're like 13 years old as well, all the pitchers suck. So it's like you're like getting your exercise. So if you're like quick as a catcher, because I was always like really scrawny, but I was pretty quick. Dude, I so many stopped balls. That was all the fun. That was the fun part for me. I like being involved in every play.
You grew up in Florida, right? Am I crazy?
Yeah,
Florida?
I was a Florida man.
What part of Florida? You don't mind me asking?
No, it was like I grew up in Orlando. Like I was born in Orlando, and then we moved north, closer to like Daytona Beach. There's like a little town called DeBerry.
Okay.
So
my grandparents live in Gainesville, so I'd be going down to Gainesville and like St. Augustine like all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dope. Speaking of random tangents, but okay.
Yeah,
so let's just get right into it. Let's start, and we'll start at home. We'll talk a little bit about Overwatch to start. Obviously, the mid-season packs just kind of came out. We won't dwell on it too much because there's a lot of greater conversations that I want to take it in terms of the gaming industry right now.
I think we're gonna be chatting about it tomorrow as well.
Yeah, I know. Oh, are you on tomorrow too?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll hold off. We'll hold off on this thing because I don't want to double dip here, but just brief thoughts on the mid. I'll talk about what I think about mid-season, but very briefly. We'll keep it brief because I don't want to double dip. I think the knob got tuned back to where probably a lot closer to where it should be. I'm happy with that. What do you think? Like, were you happy with it? Like, were you kind of
I've kind of like, I feel like you and I have always kind of seen eye to eye that like tank is a problem they have to kind of figure out. And the way I look at 5v5 is it may be a fundamentally flawed format, but while we're treading water until the 6v6 test, what can we learn about tank and counterplay? What can we learn about like where armor should be, where armor shouldn't be, what tanks are good, what tanks are bad? And I feel like they're kind of failing this experiment right now. You talked about it. I listened to your recent reaction to the patch notes, and I was like listening to your takes on like D.Va as a character is just fundamentally flawed in Overwatch 2 with their current design. I'm like, yeah, 100%, right? So is there a world where you can make a solo queue D.Va? Like, I'm not saying that that's something that we should necessarily have for 6v6, but they haven't done those experiments. We've just toyed with Matrix and armor.
And it's outside the box thinking would have to happen there that I haven't even really thought about it, to be honest.
It's right. And the same thing with like Orisa and Roadhog and like Ram's design and I think just 5v5 tank in general. Like there's a lot of ideas that I've had, and I'm sure a lot of ideas the developers have had as well, that just aren't making it to the patch notes. And the way that I look at it is that tank sucks right now. Tank has sucked right now and will probably continue to suck for a while. So let's at least try and learn something in the meantime to see if we can learn anything that we can actually kind of take into 6v6 as well. And I feel like it's just been knobs tuning up and back and up and back and up and back. It's like, oh, it's new patch notes, but there's nothing really new being done.
You know what's funny? I think I think some of the changes that you're looking for are stuff that they've done to DPS heroes. Like Cass's high noon change with the damage reduction.
Even the hinder change was like
Yeah.
such a minor thing, but it was a very clear like philosophical. We're gonna shift this a little bit away from the diva buff and more about the dueling, which Right, Soj as well, which I think Soj has been still a little bit weak, but like they've done a really good job with taking, I think, a lot of fun, but a really, really unbalanced design, right? And they've done a good job with her. And I think like that takes a lot of work and takes time. And it's like what tanks have we seen that with? Like really, like what tank out of the entire roster?
Are you talking pre-launch or are you talking like post-launch?
Since Overwatch 2, like what tanks have
I don't think we have.
Not a single tank, right?
Maybe
Not
Malga?
even Malga. Not even Malga. They gave him what is it, that overhealth when he used cardiac, but they overtuned that and they didn't nerf his self heal, so they just took it away again. Yeah, Hog has gotten worse, I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because at least he had counterplay before, right? So now it's like and even the ball stuff, like I think the adaptive shield sharing was like really cool. I think the retract was also really cool, but it's not like it's more of like it's like fun buttons to press without really like helping him out and making him like giving him some options versus CC. He still has like 1,300 freaking health, if he gets so it's like
oh, I know, I can't kill him, it's fun.
It's disappointing. I think the tank design has always been like, not just the design, but like their approach with tank has always been pretty disappointing for me.
I feel you. Okay, we'll leave the rest for group up tomorrow. I don't want to eat off SVB's plate because there's a lot of stuff in general in gaming that I want to talk about, but something that I think you and I can chime in quite a bit on. And I was hearing about this because I had a trial 2 days ago. I have to show you this C9.
Yeah,
I have to show you this C9. Dude, I'm not kidding. I back capped from the Mega on 3rd Junkertown all the way in. I don't want to leak the players because like their team was doing a trial too. So I'll show you privately. I don't want to because I know there's been a lot of VOD leaking and stuff. It was funny. I was like, there's no way. Like the Widow grappled over my head and I was just like, okay. But yeah, so there's one thing that I've noticed, and this really goes for life too, and so many people mess this up too. Player mentality. And you tend to see this in younger players too.
You're talking about
Yes. Well, I only tilt in ranked. Like in a team environment, I'm fine, right? Because like what tilts me in ranked is when I have kids who I don't think are trying. Like when my whole team's trying, like I have no problem putting that effort in. The conclusion that I've come to about ranked, and this is different from a lot of people, is like, listen, if I think some kid's trolling, I'm matching their energy levels. I'm matching their effort. That's how I get through ranked. Like I say, listen, if this kid's trolling, I'm picking soldier. If
makes for good stream content.
Yeah, it does. Well, it does, and it's like, I'm getting old, right? Look at this. You see this right here? It's a gray hair.
Oh my goodness gracious! Yeah, hey, listen. At least I can see it. If I don't see anything,
that's true. So, listen, I'll keep my hairline. I'll keep my hairline. Thank God. Thank God. I'll keep because my dad's bald, but my
how old are you? How old are you?
27. I'll be 28 in.
Oh my gosh, this guy.
You're 94, right? You said you're 94.
Yeah, I'm 30.
You're 30. Okay, well, listen. I feel as a guy, like let me just say, like as a guy, I feel like we're built for our 30s. Like I'm that's prime time, baby. That's prime time for me. I'm gonna have a good time. I'm ready.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, you're good. You're good. So for me, like one thing I've noticed, like over time, and this you could apply this to like really anywhere, is the difference between elite people who end up being elite and doing very well and a lot of people who have so much potential but implode is mentality, right? Like I've seen so many people, and you saw this a lot in Overwatch, and you could talk about it in sports too. I mean, it's really anywhere you go in competition where, so I don't want to say people's egos get in their way, but I've seen so many players, and this is like when I was going like up for the first time through OD and contenders like 4 or 5 years ago now, Jesus. There were so many talented players that were just in. Like, I saw more shit talking of other people in tier 3 than I did in tier 2, which is crazy to say because you'd think, okay, like the level of competition's higher, but a lot of the people who ended up being successful, and you could probably talk about this as a coach too, like the players that are good to work with, are the ones who take criticism well, take feedback well, and are more so like looking internally, right? And I feel like nowadays, most of the teams that implode, they'll be pointing the finger at each other. And like, despite what people see about me on stream, I didn't really do that as a teammate when I was in a scrim environment or something like that, because I knew every guy that was in that room was trying to win and get better, like alongside us. So you could take that on the chin. What has your experience been like when you see that kind of phenomenon happen? Like, have you seen a lot of players get stuck in that mentality? And like, if you're somebody at home who just wants to improve in general, like, what would you say to them about, approaching things the right way?
So like side tangent off of this, I guess into the sports realm, because I always found this super interesting. I don't know if you've seen the Netflix series The Receiver.
No, I've not.
They just released it. It's really good. It's really good. I'm a big fan. And it was really interesting to contrasting the receivers like attitudes in game, out of game. They're usually like they're pretty like flashy dudes on you see them doing the dances whatever, but they're actually like they're really humble, they're really hard workers, they're really locked in, they're self-focused, they take accountability, they take responsibility and so on. And these are young guys too, like 23, 24, a lot of them, right? And you contrast their behavior with I do a lot of flag football tournaments. I've played versus Team USA, the national
awesome.
teams, and played versus their players, and played versus these guys. And a lot of them are like D3, D2, or even sometimes D1 players that didn't quite make it to the leagues. I played with a couple NFL players that had their career ended like 4 or 5 years in, and I played with a Redskins tight end actually. Yeah. So anyway, but the difference in mentality between flag football tournaments, right, which are pretty big, but not really like the serious of the most serious, versus the actual professionals, is the flag football players are way more toxic, way more trash talk, way less professional, way less self-focused, way sloppier, don't really know how to practice, just kind of show up and play, and they'll try really hard in the game, but there's no sense of like, let's practice, let's do this, let's set goals, let's develop camaraderie, let's build each other up. Compared to the actual professionals, it's like night and day. Everyone looks at like the guy that I've got like right here and like, oh yeah, he was super mean, super toxic. He never trash talked people in an actual game, ever. He only pushed people really hard in practice. And the people that I go with, they don't even have good practice structure, much less. I mean, can you imagine if he had a Michael Jordan tier 3 that demanded his teammates always gave it their all in every single scrimmage? Yeah. Like, can you imagine? Like that's the type of toxicity that, like, okay, I'm not necessarily supporting that, but if you're going to be toxic, that's the way to go, right? And yeah, exactly. Like the tier 3 stuff is like there's so much drama. And in Overwatch, like, yeah, there's a little drama here and there, but everyone's pretty much they're just focused on themselves. Yeah, they want to win.
They're there. It's almost.
Right.
Do you think it's like a pressure off of them? Like, do you think that it's like a pressure to perform that people can't handle, or what do you think that has anything to do with it, or is that just?
I think it's like just survivorship bias. Like, if you have that type of mentality where you're always like shifting blame and you can't take accountability, and like you're not gonna make it to the top level. Like, you might be talented, you might have good mechanics, you might be smart, but you're just not gonna make it, because like if you do have that mentality, you fall off. I mean, I know of a lot of, you probably have heard of a lot of Overwatch League players that like the flash in the pan, they can't handle the pressure, and high tier 2 and they fumble,
and it's
hard.
Flop. It's a hard commitment too. I try to tell people this. I at least at the time, and shout out Coach Mills now. Like even now, like I wouldn't be able to do like any of my YouTube stuff. I don't know how I did this for years by myself. Maybe I was young and I just didn't. I don't know, but going from my schedule was. I had to flip-flop my stream schedule like my second season, because like I didn't want to underperform in scrims, because I always would stream the mornings and like do a 4 to 5 hour block, edit my videos, and then get into a scrim for another 4 hours later. That was like, I can't be playing and performing at my best on the back half of a 10 to 12 hour day. I couldn't. No, so I flipped my stream schedule, and I think this was like 2020, like kind of leading up into COVID. Where I would wake up at about like 4 p.m., go to Shake Shack. I would get giant burger, hot dogs. I'd load it up. It'd be one big meal. I would load that thing up. I would scrim from about 6 to 10, VOD review like 10 to 11, go live at 11 p.m. and stream until 4 or 5 in the morning, maybe 6 a.m. Those are the hard blue lobbies, let me tell you. And then I would try to edit a video from like 6 to 7 a.m., go to sleep, rinse, repeat. And eventually I was like, okay, like this, I can't. I don't really care about playing in the league or not. I played in contenders just like mostly to grow my stream, because this is a big thing that people don't talk about, like getting on the, like what establishes you as a content creator. I guess we can kind of transition here into like the content creation space a little bit, and because I know this is something that I wouldn't say you're newer at, like you've done it for a while.
I'm newer.
Well, like you have been doing it for 10 years, right? But I guess I've been doing this for about 8-9 years. Jesus,
that's insane.
Jesus Christ. I mean, wow.
That's insane.
Time flies, right? Time flies, right? You know, I wish I
It
could
does,
see
man.
myself now. See the gray hair is freaking me out, man. I gotta embrace the touch of gray. I gotta embrace the touch of gray. It's
You
gonna
gotta
happen.
embrace it, man.
I've been getting lit up in my chat.
It looks good for dudes, though. I think it's
I
good.
know.
You
Like
get a little
that's
salt and
what I'm
pepper.
saying. That might be how I have to turn it. They need to put me in one of those. You remember all the ads we used to see for like touch of gray, and then
Yeah.
everybody would have.
Yeah.
They got to put me on
Yeah.
one of those.
Yeah. You just got to put a suit on, and then you're cooking.
I got my blazers over here. Listen, there's
you
one
go.
thing you got to do in Lexington. It's you got to have a blazer. It's because it's Keeneland country. It's horse country out here, and like the tradition of like the Derby is
Right.
like it's like a big deal over here. But
Right.
regardless, where was I going with this? I totally blanked. This is
You were talking about the content creation.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
new-
content
obviously
creation in
the
general.
content creation, Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, for aspiring content creators, because this is an era of content creation, right? And it's really interesting to see it happen where, you know, it goes back to, you know, I would say even the cable companies in the early 2000s where you saw the big shift away from cable onto sites like YouTube, onto things like Netflix, onto Hulu, right? Where it used to be a very cable-dominated industry. And, you know, the transition to UGC where the ability to make good content and better technology is coming to like, you know, guys like us, like sitting at home, like we're, you know, we're not one man shows necessarily, but you know, it's a very small team. Well, traditionally, you know, in the world where if you wanted to make content, you had to have these massive teams. This is a big shift in business. You know, you could trace it to any industry from game development too, with platforms like Roblox just killing it the last really 6-7 years, to Minecraft. So you see Gary's mods, Steam. I think you're starting to see the big shift away from big corporate to like a lot of this stuff to actually like smaller studios. And you can see this in games like Power World coming out too, like Lethal Company last year coming out, Among Us really in 2022. Like there's a long list of things, and it's really interesting to see. One thing that I've had to learn in content creation, and I think maybe this has been a part of your journey too, is trying to figure out like what separates you from the pack. Like why are people gonna come out and watch you? I would say people would watch you because again, you're very level-headed. You actually have nuanced takes where there's actual thought. You know, it's not Twitter usually. Yeah, well sometimes. I saw a video of your buddy. His name's Relth, right? It's Relth, where he's screaming at Spilo for 45. His video titles crack me up, and like that's stuff that people would click on. I also want to give a special shout out to Nateson. I'm not sure if you know Nate. But
I don't know Nate.
He's one of
Nate.
He's one of my good buddies. He's like we talk content all the time. He ran the Pixel Playground YouTube channel with Creek, and he's on Mr. Beast. Oh Jesus, why am I brain farting right now?
Well, you are 28, so.
Yeah, I know this is bad. I'm too young to supposed to be doing this. Why am I totally blanking?
The gray hair is like reflected in your brain.
Carl Jacobs. Yeah, he ran that channel with them, and I think they're at like 1 million subs in like a couple months, with like 100 million views. He just got a job at Disney at their social media company. Yeah. And so like, you know, and a lot of these things that he put himself out there like helped separate him from the pack. And so for me, like at least what I wanted to do to separate myself from the pack was, all right, like, you know, I want to go pro. I want to prove myself as a player. And I had to ask myself, and like, this is the hardest thing that you have to do. And like, you know, I encourage anybody at home, like, it's not sunshines and daisies. A lot of people come out and they say, I want to be a streamer. You got to look yourself in the mirror and be like, okay, what value am I bringing here? And like the first step is to understand that you're not bringing anything. That was what it was for me. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's not everybody's approach, but I had to look myself in the mirror and be like, okay, like what separates me from the back? At the time, you know, you had guys like the Fran popping off. You had Dante, and these guys are the best tracer players in the world, right? You know, they were so good. And I was like, okay, like what can I bring to the table? And I started small, and it was piece by piece. I think so many people expect to see success overnight, and that's just Rome wasn't built in one night. Nothing. That's one of my favorite sayings. Like Rome wasn't built in one night. You know.
Yeah.
So in your mind, like, what was your journey into content creation, right? Like coming from the coaching space, and like, what were some of the hardships that you faced, and what's some advice that you would give people that kind of want to get into this? Back at home?
I was kind of in a unique position to where I think content creation and coaching kind of started at the same time because I'd come from a similar gaming background where I made some fun videos and coaching background. So when I got into it, the first couple of Overwatch videos I made were more silly videos, right? And I realized, man, I don't want to do this. I'm just gonna do coaching. So I'm like learning the game. I'm like literally silver gold player coaching silver gold players like as I'm playing, ranking up over time. And I think at that point in time I'd watched like Overwatch League and I was like, man, I want to like coach like pro level. And so then I committed to the grind. And so really I think my content kind of reflected that grind along the way. It's like as my coaching got better, so did my coaching content. And I think I was pretty myopic for like a long time. like really, really a long time. Like I don't think I really found any sort of nuance or interesting dynamics in my content creation until I was already finished with Overwatch League and I was back into content creation for a few months, because that was something I always struggled with. Is like Jane had done really well with the educational sphere. Jane had always been a little bit more casual than I had been. And also Jane was just, I think, at the time, a much better, much more approachable, much more personable person than I was, right? He just had a personality that just like really clicked with a lot of people. He had a lot of really fun, nuanced ways of teaching and explaining things. And I did roast reviews. So, that was fine. That was my limitation. So as I think I came back into scene, I think that was really my question is as I looked at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, what kind of content am I going to make? Like, what is obviously Overwatch 2 is going to be a lot of new players. So we could definitely tap into the educational headspace here. But I had this realization when I first started streaming again. I did 3 coaching sessions back to back to back, right? Because that was what made decent money at the time. And I was not with the league anymore. And so I was streaming these. But of course, I'm like locked in coaching the person. They're in a voice call with me. And so my Twitch chat's just like, hey, we're here, for 3 hours, like 3.5 hours. And I had to realize, I was like, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. I can't, I'm going to have to start. I started doing them, a lot of them off stream. And I had to come up with new ideas. And a lot of it started to be like, well, what stuff do I like about Overwatch? I don't like necessarily, at the time, I didn't really like playing a lot on stream. So I was just like, let's just talk like my thoughts on the game design. Let's talk about hero design. Let's talk about like educational concepts. Let's do like funny tier lists about hero design, because that's something that I had done even back in the day. You can go back in my YouTube channel and you can find an SVB skill floor, skill ceiling, value floor, value ceiling tier list of every single we had a PowerPoint and everything. We spent like 8 or 10 hours on that, and that stuff had always kind of tickled my fancy. So we've really leaned into that because people like to talk about that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of where, and it was something that I was good at, and it was something that I liked talking about and thinking about. And so I think like getting into the content headspace, like you said, is really hard work. So you really, really, really have to lean into, I won't say necessarily your strengths, because they don't have to be strengths right away, but they do have to be things that will become strengths because you like doing them.
Yes. And this is what people don't realize about me. It's like, if you went, like, just my ability to yap, right? Like people, I could go on forever, but it wasn't always like, granted, I did have an innate extroverted personality that, I still had to develop that though. Like if you go back and watch my original Minecraft videos from back 2015, right? I was a very different kid back then. Like I struggled to keep talking. I was like, and people were like, well, you can do this naturally. It's so easy and lazy on accident. I'm not saying people do this on purpose, but like, you get yourself in this trap, and this goes for work ethic, for anything. You just look at somebody who's good at something and be like, oh, well, they're just naturally gifted. You think that person didn't have to work hard or practice? You know how many times I stood in front of the mirror just talking about, I still do it to this day. And it's like, I think every day I will be in front of the mirror, and any ideas that come in my head, I just talk. And maybe that's just because I'm a little, weird.
Are you a shower thoughts guy? Like, I come up with all my ideas in the shower.
I zone out in the shower. Sometimes, like, I play through. Well, no, actually, no. Like, it's so weird, and I do this. Like, every day I do this. I go on my walks. Like, I try to get, like, a 5-mile walk. And my grandpa did it, too. Like, it just runs in the family, I guess. Where I will just, like, be thinking about situations in my head and, like, dreaming out possibilities and, walking it, through. So when the situation comes up, I'm prepared. And I do this for every single thing that I do in my life. Like, whether or not it's, like, a meeting, whether it's mostly Mindplex work nowadays, because, like, that's just, I stream mornings and then do Mindplex at night. Like, it's 12 hours most days. I could still be better. That's the frustrating part is, the time commitment. But, it's hard. Like, you have to develop these skills, and like, you don't necessarily have to be there. And I say this about content creation all the time. Like, what my stream is about, and like what I decided to do in the Overwatch scene. But for better or for worse, it's not for everybody. I understand. I wanted to take a part of my personality and amplify it, right? Like, that's going to be what separates me from the pack.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Sometimes. Oh my God. Sometimes, that's speaking of Mindplex tax, that's one of them. That's just what I chose to have separate me from the pack, and like the toughest pill to swallow. And I remember this moment. I don't know why this stuck with me, but I had somebody to really help me with my content creation at the start when I switched to Overwatch. His name is Sam, and he had a channel called The Gamer Couple, and this was prime Fortnite, like 2017, 2018 Fortnite. He had one of the biggest Fortnite channels, and now he works at Top 5 Gaming, and they get 100 million views a month. Like, they're crazy over there. And like, when you realize how great big the ceiling is for content creation outside of the the Overwatch circle, it's not a shot at Overwatch at all, but like, it's a huge ocean out there. It's crazy. It's crazy what some of these channels are doing. And he sat down with me and he was like, listen, you just got to figure out like what's your niche. Like, you have the talent, you have everything. And like, a lot of people have the talent and the ability, but they don't go out and do the work consistently. Look at PGE, for example. He's kind of blown up in the past like year or two, really. You and I know he's been around grinding. He's been the same kid for like, 5 years. Like, he's been he was always a goofball, like back in the rank. Like, a lot of the East Coast guys were like, guys like Wub, guys, there's so many great guys out there. So much talent. But when you actually apply yourself to the process and you get the right people around you to put yourself out there, that's the consistent work. Another example is like Sabrina Carpenter, right? Who people are just like, oh, she blew up overnight. Now she's everywhere.
Right.
But that's not really what it was, because she was sitting there doing hard work for 5, 6, 7 years of like consistently trying at it, and then you just get your lucky break. And
it's just when you heard about her, basically.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I remember my moment. I will never forget this. Somebody was talking to me about, I think it was CarQ's content in like 2017, 2018. It was like, because I see this a lot, and you know what? I see the same, I'm going to call it tier 3 mentality in a lot of smaller streamers out there who, no shame to anybody, but I hear more gossip about other content creators from streamers, and like, this is where everybody starts, like about the 50 to 75 viewer mark, whatever it might be. And that's a great middle ground to get going and really build the foundation. That's where everybody starts, myself included. I'm not shaming the viewer count, but so like a common mentality that I've noticed is there's way more shit talk about other people when you're around that point. And I remember somebody talking shit about Nathan to me and being like, he just rips off other people's content, like the one tip every hero, and it's blah, blah, blah. And I sat there and I thought about it, and I was like, is that actually true? Or are people just secretly deep down jealous and upset with themselves, and they're deflecting it onto someone else? And I asked myself that question. I said, you know what? That's wrong. He's out there making good content. I need to focus on how I can make my best content. I don't want to surround myself with this stuff. And so I cut off a lot of people, and I started focusing on me. I decided to stream on YouTube. Do you want to know why I decided to stream on YouTube?
No, why?
There was no one else. How are you gonna? I love the cat, by the way. How are you gonna tell me? Like, why would I sit there and stream on Twitch where there's less viewership? You're not gonna be able to grow. Like, if you want to grow your stream, you upload YouTube videos. That's where the most of the users are. Like, you can get good viewership on Twitch, yes, but it's a very top-heavy platform, right? And it always will be.
It's also hard to find you too.
Yeah, it's difficult to find you. So why? And this is something my dad drilled into me about business, because my family. My dad's been in the business world since he was 14. He had to work at the family store. They ran it for 108 years when they migrated to the United States, and it was a clothing store, dude. They started in rural Kentucky and like the Cincinnati area, and they grew out the chain. I never got to work in it because it closed down, unfortunately, before I got to that point. I would have probably wanted to go my own way anyway. That speaking of egos getting out of control, that's generally what happens in family business. That messy stuff. But my dad had to work the floor from when he was 14 to when he left for his own firm and stuff when he was much older, and when I was like really little. But he drilled this into me. He was like, listen, like, pay attention. Like, everything is connected. Like, you need to pay attention to what's around you. And I looked at this. I was like, okay, explain to me how a platform like YouTube has this many more users, but only one person streaming, and it was Jackals. And Jackals was getting like 300 viewers. The Junkrat player, Jackals, right? And I was like, listen, if Jackals can get 300 viewers, I can get 6. Because I'm like LeBron on Hanzo right now. Like, I swear to God, I'd get 6.
I remember streaming you.
Yeah, dude, good time. Well, we can talk about that a bit if we want to. But, and I would give this advice to any creator out there, too. It's like, put yourself out there. Like, don't be afraid to experiment. If you expect it to work immediately, you just got the wrong mentality. Like, flesh out your potential. Find the part of you that's going to separate yourself from the pack. It can be a niche. You don't have to be for everyone. You got to swallow that red pill. You cannot please everyone. And I learned that when people didn't like Emong. I was like, how do you not like Emong? How, like, that dude does not have a bad bone in his body. You're going to sit here and you're going to tell me you don't like Emong. I'm like, come on, man. Has that been your experience too? I guess I just yapped for
Yeah.
about 5 to 10 minutes.
No, no, no. I mean, that's why we're here. I think, yeah, I think there's this general impression from a lot of people that think like content creation is just about like, just gotta get that, I gotta blow up. I just gotta blow up. I think I see this like a lot with like, especially like TikTok and stuff like that, because you can blow up in TikTok.
Yeah.
You make just one really silly video, and I think you can blow up in YouTube too, and I think you can blow up in Twitch. But I don't think do we know any really successful content creator that's really blown up off of a video or a stream? I can't think of one really off the top of my
One
head.
specifically, no. And like even like take the J3 bug on you stuff. Are we gonna act
Right.
like Jay wasn't grinding for years up to that point?
And he was already like a pretty
Yeah.
successful streamer at that point.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so like and the thing is he took it and he ran with it. And then when those, I guess, gimmicks end, he's still going.
Yeah, exactly.
Still going. He's still Jay. He leveled up his game. And I think that's the key thing is you get those opportunities like the stupid bug on you thing. All right, what are you gonna do?
Shout
Are you
out
gonna
Frill
hit
for that, by the way?
opportunity?
That was all right.
Yeah. What, that was Frill?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, of course it was. So that makes sense. Speaking of East Coast brain rot, so like that like he took that opportunity and he made the most of it, and I think like that's the key thing is like wherever you are in life, like as a content creator or not, you're gonna have some opportunities. Some of us are gonna get more opportunities than others, but like what do you do with those opportunities? I always like to say that like I've never had a video blow up. Never. I've never had a video reach like 100K in the first 2 days or 3 days. Never. I've never had like any big moment with streaming. I've never had a big moment with coaching. And that was the same with my pro career too. I don't know what was with you, but like I never got like I joined the Overwatch League, like or pro coaching scene, contenders, whatever, way too late. Like I was like 3 or 4 years, like season 3, season 4. I didn't even make my first academy trial. My first academy team was a disaster. The organization, the management was a disaster. We'll probably talk about that later. Yeah, it was terrible, right? And so, and my first contenders opportunity was with Hard Blue on Chicken Contendies. That team was also a disaster.
You were? I didn't know that you were on Contendies.
Yeah, I resigned. I resigned.
Was that season we played you all?
Maybe it might have been.
I don't think we played you all. Go
it
ahead,
was
sorry.
2019. No, but it was just like everything that I did just didn't work, But I got a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better, and so like, and that's just kind of how it goes, Is you're just gonna have a lot of trial and error, and I think most people's path is probably gonna like represent or resemble mine, where it's like it's a lot of just grunge and grit and grime and. Viewers are going to go up and they're going to go down, and you just kind of have to find it and stick with it. And like you said, it's you just really have to keep working at it and taking feedback and improving the product. And you really have to be self-focused, because even if you look at people that are like, oh, they got lucky and I could be getting more views than them. Well, you're not. So
it's a dangerous rabbit hole to go down to.
Yeah, it really is. It's a dangerous mindset to put yourself. It's really similar to like the whole Elo hell mindset. You read the Blizzard forums of the hearts, like Blizzard Moira one tricks. You know what I'm saying? It's not exactly the same, because I would say content is not entirely a meritocracy, but it is mostly a meritocracy. And I think it's time for us to like finally admit that. I think.
Yeah, no, for sure is, and that's it's all a process. And I guess the moral of the story is don't quit either. Like don't keep doing the same thing over and over again if it's not working. The definition of insanity. But like if you quit on yourself at the same time, you'll never get there. It's not as simple as I boot up my stream one day and I'm good to go. Like it's hard. Like it's a lot of hard work. And I know a lot of people look at streaming and they're like, oh, it's easy. It's this. You get to do that. It is never that easy. Nothing in the world is that easy if you're entertaining people. Nothing.
And if you've done some hard jobs, I'm sure you have in the past prior to streaming.
I was the best bag boy Kroger ever saw. So
I did I did tree service.
Oh my God. Okay.
Dude, it kicked my tail. It was a hard freaking job. One of my coworkers died on the job.
Yeah. Those are risky too.
Yeah. Very, very dangerous job. Very, very hard job. Is freezing cold. And that job was like as hard as this job, because it's not the physical labor. Everyone thinks about like physical labor. It's like, if you want to be successful at this, like you were saying earlier, you got to be a really hard thinker. You got to be constantly on, whether I'm coaching, whether I'm streaming, whether I'm recording. My brain is always like, there's no you
can't clock out. There's no clocking out when you run your own business. There's no clocking out.
And you can't sit there and play solitaire or just like sit in there in a Zoom meeting and just kind of like be half paying attention. Yeah. I noticed that one of the bad things, the nice things about a physical labor job is that I could be like thinking about stuff and just kind of like letting my mind go. Yeah. Literally chop it. Like we had days where we'd split and deliver like cords of wood. love those days because I could just think, and I love chopping.
I feel you.
You're just chilling. But when I'm on this, I'm not allowed to have that mental headspace, like a brain space, you know. And it was the same thing with Overwatch, like too. Like I'm always on, always turned, like, and it's exhausting if you're doing your job. Not everybody does it like that. I knew a lot of Overwatch League coaches that just they're coasting, you know what I'm saying? But you know, if you want to be successful, you can't do that. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that. I'm not going to say that like there's people out there sweating in the coal mines and those people have easier jobs than streaming. But I will say that like I think there are some creators out there that maybe just turn on their camera and play the game and turn off their camera and that's their stream. But that's never been you and that's never been me. So
I can't do that. You know, my dad's got a saying. It's like you can't. When you run your own business, like you can't afford to check out. You never check out. And he's done, you know, I respect him a ton because he's been through he's been through the ringer, man. I mean, you know, he's run his own stuff for about, you know, maybe 20 years now. Maybe Jesus Christ. And you know, I've learned a lot of valuable lessons from it. You can't check out. And like for me, like I have the saying, it's like the Hulk, right? Like, you know, or better yet, Bon Jovi, I'm going to quote Living on a Prayer. It's, you know, you live for the fight when it's all that you got. And I've kind of lived my life by that. I would not recommend it to everybody else because you can burn out. You know, I've had times where I've spiraled because of it, you know, and you have to take a step back and, you know, say, okay, like this was too much. Let's back off this. Let's figure this out. It's all a part of the process. Yeah. Now, I guess moving past that point, I want to segue a little bit back into the gaming industry here. Yeah. You know, you've talked about this quite a bit, and I think a lot of people are starting to see it, you know, with games like Concord, where, and I know its situation's a little bit more unique, but, you know, it seems like people want games to fail nowadays. And you didn't really see this pre-2020.
It's bitterness.
It's bitterness. I think a lot of IPs either, one, have not lived up to their former glory, which is pretty damn hard to do. Like you could say it for Borderlands, maybe. You could say it for Overwatch, even Warzone. You could say it for Warzone was especially bad in my opinion. Like Warzone 2 was a disaster in my mind. Battlefield 2042. I don't even know if you remember that one coming out like 2 years ago. You know, it seems like there's a big sentiment in gaming where like the internet like wishes for these games to fail and they're sitting there hating on them.
So lesson to prove is I think what people think.
Yeah. So what do you think about that kind of culture? Do you think that people are rooting for games to fail? Do you think that the gaming space in general is healthy when that's happening? Or, you know, where's the heart at on that?
I think people are just very cynical of like kind of the whole corporate, this is the product, you're going to enjoy the product kind of a thing. And if they make mistakes or they do things, they don't take criticism or they don't take feedback. I'm not as familiar with Concord particularly. I did see some of the character designs. I watched a couple of videos on it. I think they blew up on YouTube. And I was like, you know, I can see why people aren't going to want to play this game. Without even looking at the gameplay. Like just the character design just isn't visually interesting at all, like not at all. And I think a lot of people from, and this is really just media in general. This isn't just games. You know, this is the TV shows. You got like The Acolyte, Rings of Power, some of the other like gaming remake stuff. And it's just like basically what it is it's corporate, lazy, artistically devoid drivel. And they're basically just trying to create a money printing operation out of it. And I think people are like, bro, this product sucks. You didn't put effort and people that are actually passionate about the project in it. So people wish for that to fill. And I think the hard part here is that you have to have like I agree with those people on a lot of those things. Like Rings of Power sucks. I went to that show in season 1. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I did not look at any reviews. I did not want to be biased by, you know, those woke libs. You know, I just wanted to maybe it's good. You know, really, I want to go in and watch it. And it was just bad in almost every single way. And I think at the same time, I want to have empathy for the people that I'm sure that were on Concord's development and that were on Rings of Power that are passionate and do things. But obviously, like, you know, with the leadership or this or that, like, I don't, you know, you don't really know who. I think even Rings of Power, there were some moments where I thought some of the actors and actresses did a pretty good job with what they were given, right? And it's just trash, you know. And I think Concord might be one of those things where like the idea of the game, the feedback, the perception, whatever is flawed, and I feel for those developers that are reading all this like very vitriolic, angry, understandably frustrated feedback, but it's not necessarily their fault, you know.
Yeah.
So I can understand, I can sympathize with the people that are angry and bitter and frustrate this corporate crap that keeps doing over and over and over again. But you can still have empathy for the people that did
Yeah.
work on it and did care, you know.
For sure. For sure. And I obviously, like, you know, it was like 7 years, 8 years in development. It sucks to see that happen.
That's
I
just
fear,
insane, man. Like,
I fear,
I can't even imagine.
I
Like,
know it's tough. It's tough. And then I fear the concept of like a platform limited or exclusive hero shooter is just like fundamentally flawed as well. You know, there's a reason why when, you know, Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard, it goes against their interest to have Call of Duty not be on the PlayStation. And that was a big part of the lawsuit. You know, they lost in the UK. They lost their monopoly case. Like in the UK, they ended up winning it. Like, and, you know, after pledging to keep a lot of these games on multiple platforms and stuff. But, you know, I'm worried that that's a bit flawed. And I do think that there's maybe we're just coming off a high in gaming. Because let's be real for a second here. I would say 2016 to 2020, it wasn't like, to me, like there definitely was a golden era of games, if you will. I would say from like 08 with, you know, at MW2, Black Ops 1, you know, Borderlands 2 come out, you know, the Arkham series was coming out, Elder Scrolls had come out, Witcher 3. You had a golden era. You really did, of like from every genre, games of really high quality were getting put out there. But, you know, 2016 to 2020 for the multiplayer space was really damn good. You had Overwatch come out, followed by PUBG, Fortnite. Are you kidding me? Then you have Warzone come out not too long after that. Apex Legends releases, right? Valorant comes out in 2020. You have a lot of very successful games come out. So it's no surprise that, you know, 2020 to even 24, I don't think there's been a big multiplayer like in the shooter genre that's really popped out. I think Marvel will sustain itself. I'm not sure how big that's going to be yet. I think it'll be sustainable. Deadlock, I think, will definitely maintain a pretty big audience as well. I would say we're definitely due. So it's no surprise to me that like you're gonna have streaks. You're gonna have streaks, and it's gonna be hard to live up to that kind of expectation, I guess, and the bar that was set. You know, for all the grief that I give Overwatch, I absolutely acknowledge how high they set the bar. They really kicked off. Like Overwatch was the first multiplayer game that kicked off that wave from 2016 to 2020. Overwatch started that.
Yep.
You know,
and there's really two categories of games that kind of fall into that. They're either going to follow the hype wave and release trash that's going to die off, right? Which is like that's the death of the art. Or there's going to be people that learn from the prior game's mistakes and like polish and make the best version of that product. And I think right now it's like you're seeing a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. Like Deadlock feels really clean in a lot of ways. And I think the Marvel Rivals is a great example of like, are they going to learn from Overwatch, or are they just going to be like, hey, we've got a super sick IP, let's just see what we can coast off of that. And I think that remains to be seen.
And we'll see on that one. NetEase definitely has a lot to prove too. You know, I'm excited to see it, but you know, there's a lot of innovation in gaming right now too. Like there's a lot of really cool things coming out, and you know, I'm curious. I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. I'm curious about what you think about this. I'm not sure how much you've looked into AI specifically. In terms of just for the sake of Mindplex, I'm trying to keep up with a lot more technology stuff that's going on and just understand like where things are at. You know, AI in the next couple years is going to make some incredible leaps and bounds to whether it be for like, for example, like one thing that I haven't really explored this. So before I've had to deal with this a ton where like I'll say something and then like the Mindplex community will like take it as fact, and then I'll just get lit up and my co-owners are going to be like, dude, what the hell did you say? And it's like, dude, like I'm just spitballing. Do you all not know me? I spitball because that's just what I do. I spitball ideas and stuff. So people before Mindplex is using AI, whatever. Listen, I'm not invested in any AI, anything like that. But I do find it interesting to see, okay, I wonder how you can use something like AI to improve like mob behavior or like boss behavior or something like that. Like I wonder like if you can make a boss like something that learns and grows like as you play against it. Like Lord knows the Overwatch 2 PvE could have used that. That would have been sick.
Yeah, that would have been sick.
But, you know, have you done any research or like looked into like what AI is at right now in the gaming space? And do you think that it's something like from a philosophical standpoint that we should go? I know this is a very random tangent, but you know, this is something I'm curious what you'd say.
So my father-in-law is super into the whole AI headspace. He's like a really, really smart dude, and he works for the New Hampshire government. And so he's always like, in the loop of like what's going on and like whether they're going to be implementing this kind of stuff. And his take on things, which I think is probably fairly accurate, is that AI is going to be so powerful and so important that even if you have like let's say a philosophical or an ethical concern with AI, at some point in probably the next 4 or 5 years, you're going to be using something that's heavily utilizing AI, and you really can't technically avoid it all that much. The question is how does that then transition into the artistic sphere, copyright law, and all that kind of stuff? And I really don't know what the answer is there. As a game developer, I don't envy. I mean, I think it's easier for like an existing game, but like let's say a new game developer.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, you got a really important ethical decision to be asking yourself right now, you know? And I think like that's like we're also at a point in time right now where like optics are pretty important. So like if like let's say a game developer used AI, I think generally the people's impression of AI is generally disfavorable right now. That will change, I think, over time as people get used to it. But you know, you also run the risk of like reputation.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, like you said, it is a very useful tool. So it's like, man, I think that's like almost an impossible one to decide.
It's hard. I understand. I don't think I'd rather not see AI get into the art sphere. You know who's terrified of it right now? The music industry. The music industry is like, because you know you have.
And rightfully so.
They made a song of me singing like freaking God. What song was that? There was some AI song where I sang the whole damn song and freaking Bad Pachimari tweeted it. Or something. I don't know what it was, dude. You know, I was spitting, you know, but like I Lord knows I can't sing. But yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting to see what happens. I think that for parts of it, it's inevitable. Like if you look at like society in general, it's like I feel like people arguing against AI right now are kind of in the same position that like mailmen were in when the email was getting invented. You know, it's like obviously like, we still like there's still mail that needs to get delivered and all this other stuff, but like, you know, definitely like a big part of that business went away when emails were invented. Did it destroy the business? No, and I hope AI doesn't do that.
It's the old classic Luddite argument of like, you know, innovation is going to screw some people over. I just think we've never seen something to this
scale.
extent, to this scale, right? It is beyond. I mean, I was talking with my father-in-law, and I was like, you know, this feels like a top 3 invention in the past century. You know,
it's insane. It's like the TV
getting
invented.
Electricity, cell phone, and AI.
Yeah,
it really feels like
it's going to be crazy. I wonder if we could end up in like some like Ultron world or something like that. Who knows?
I know.
Like, you know, scary stuff. I do hope it gets regulated, but you know, it's definitely something I've been following a lot more extensively in the past, I guess, 2 years, and I'm curious where it'll go. I'm curious how it will affect the game development and to what degree people accept it. It'll be fun to watch, but I guess that's a random tangent to go on. So I guess to ask you another question here, do you have any questions for me, right? Is there anything that you wanted to talk about today that I haven't really touched on? Any experiences that you want to share?
I mean, topically, I would just be interested. Like, I think we've got maybe some stories to swap about, like our path to pro and like what that was like. And I think, like tier 2 is like, it is the depressing, dark basement, you know, of the Overwatch scene. At least it was for a lot of people that I work with. So I'm curious if you've got some stories and,
for me,
and how difficult it was.
It was hard. So I was at a point where I think I will never forget this. It was February of 2019. Like I had grown my stream like kind of like to step 1 where I was getting a couple hundred concurrent viewers every day. And for whatever reason, like, you know, I'm very prideful. I take a lot of pride in what I do, for better or for worse. It's helped me a lot. It's also hurt me a lot at times too. That's just the nature of the game, right? And you know, I learned to embrace that part of me instead of run away from it. And I think that helped me a lot. Accepting the fact that you're flawed. My dad does that. My grandpa did that. Wow, that's the Kentucky English right there. You love that.
Exactly.
That's Appalachia country right there. But, you know, it's accepting those flaws and learning to embrace them. And I remember a scrim. I rang for phase 2, okay? And we were scrimming Rebellion with, like, Logic, Shane, and all those guys, okay?
Yeah. Montreal, yeah. It was Toronto's academy team. And we got spawn camped. And I was like, you know fucking what? That's bullshit. Like the only fights we were winning was, like, when I would, like, do something crazy on Hans. I was like, you know what? Hell no. So I talked to them about joining the team, and they were like, I think they had Wub at the time. I don't know who they had. Maybe it was, no, it was Olu. I think it was Olu they had, and they chose to play Olu over me. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So the next week I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. Like, I think that this is what I need to take my channel to the next level. I need credibility. And
I ended up trying out for Triumph, and I made Triumph in the first go. That first team, I think we did better. I want to say that we did better than like almost any team ever coming straight out of Open Division, like in that era.
I would agree with that if I remember correctly. You guys were consistently like third place, and that was like a very competitive period of time as well.
Yeah, that was when like
I think Contenders was so good at that.
Yeah.
Like I think late 2019, early 2020, mid 2020, like that, like I guess mid 2019 to mid 2020, like Contenders was stacked.
I would say even
really
early, like
good.
2018 too. Like I would say like when the
Really?
academy teams,
Yeah.
late 2018 probably, because that's when Atlanta was first starting to make their runs.
Yeah, that's
I
fair.
would say that was when it was. Like there were several OWL rosters in that season.
Oh yeah,
and
for
we went straight from OD to third place in Contenders, and like we won like that was, I don't think anybody really did that. We didn't drop a map in Open Division. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Then
Man, Fragan was with that team for a long time.
He was. He was. That roster, it was me, Icy, Decod, Awkward, Chop, A10 for a bit. He got poked to second win and then ended up with you guys. And then we got Lynx instead of A10. And that was a blender. You know, it was tough, but I remember, speaking of tier 3 mentality, one of the players that would talk so much shit about me, I think he ended up being caught cheating too. I think his name was Taboo. Not a bad dude, but like
I know Taboo. Taboo got he was in. I had issues with Taboo when I was with Sheer Cold a whole year later.
Really? Did he still play?
Yeah,
I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
to
he
him.
still played late 2020. He was on one of the teams coming out of OD, and he got ganked, and we won. They forfeited the match because he got caught.
Was he cheating?
Yeah, he was cheating. Yeah,
Every
they
time.
weren't allowed to play him.
Every time. Every time.
Yep.
And so I remember like we ended up playing them and just fucking laid the law. And I wanted to talk so much shit. And I didn't. I kept my head high because I knew, I was like, look, like I got to be above this. Like I know the level of play that we can get to. Like we started scrimming XL2. We started scrimming Atlanta. We started scrimming a lot of these teams. Chicken contendies. That was another example where we were getting rolled. And I got pissed off because fucking Hardblue, this guy Hardblue, let me tell you, I hope he sees this. This is a rat. This dude would double bubble in every fight, dude. This guy, he was like the most aggressive Zarya player ever. And we could not deal with him. We could not deal with him. And I remember sitting down with my team in VOD review, and this was a tough time for me too, because at the time, like, you know, my stream, and this is like when I had started to get around like 1K viewers, like around this ballpark. I was actually like top 5 streams on YouTube Gaming at the time every morning because there weren't that many people streaming. So like having like 1,500 viewers or like 1K to 1,500 viewers, that was a big number on YouTube back then. This is before Tim, this is before Courage, this is before Valkyrie. And so at the time, I was actually in negotiations with Facebook to stream there exclusively. So I'm trying to juggle this, dude. What a fucking disaster!
And they snatched up everybody. They snatched up one of my favorite Age of Empires streamers.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, T90. I think he made like a couple million off of the deal, and then ended up coming back to Twitch like a year and a half later.
Yeah, they were paying a lot of like you could do non-exclusive for like maybe 40 hours, 80 hours a month, something like that. 80 hours a month, non-exclusive, and you make $100,000 a year on Facebook. Yeah, wow. yeah. That's because this at the time, like the big investor world, like Goldman Sachs and all these other people, instead of investing in the gaming industry, this is when streaming had just become mainstream. So you saw all the investor money getting dumped into streaming platforms like Mixer.
It reminds me of Overwatch League, where they have no idea, like esports, that is new thing. Let's put money. It's like, bro,
no, that's yeah. Well, it was crazy because so what ended up happening, and this is a crazy, you know, Minecraft graduate story. I don't know if people actually know this story, you know. Originally, Mixer, there was Facebook Gaming, and then there was Beam on Microsoft, which then rebranded to Mixer, right? And there were these competing platforms. You had DLive coming up too. Like there were a ton of platforms getting invested a ton of money into. So Facebook already had a ton of money, and honestly, Facebook Gaming had good viewership on the right games. It still does to this day. It's huge in Asia for games like PUBG Mobile. Massive over there, where like the culture is more centered around Facebook and I guess Instagram. But there were a lot of Overwatch streamers who got damn good viewership on Facebook. You know, there was like Nichols over there. Yeah, oh dude, there's some big Overwatch Facebook pages, or there were like posts like 2018, 2019. I'm not sure where they're at now, but yeah, no, they had a lot of traffic. And you know, there's after that big report came out, Goldman Sachs did a report on like the streaming industry and all this stuff with Twitch and YouTube gaming and all this stuff. And that's when you saw all the money get dumped in. So Facebook was trying to compete in like the streamer wars by buying people out. And so they contracted these agencies to go get these deals done. And so I did the math at the time, and I'll talk about this. This is like 5 years later. So you're going to buy someone exclusively,
Right.
Like you can't just pay them what they already have. You need to pay them like a surplus, essentially. Right. So I think the math that I did, and I talked to a lot of people about it. I think if they were going to buy me out at the time, because you'd have to do like, EBITDA, right? So it's like, 3 to 6 times like what your estimated growth would be. Like, I think the contract probably should have been worth, if they were to do it, like between like $400,000 and $500,000, right? Obviously, that was not gonna fucking happen. And like they ended up giving me an offer that was so insulting after I put so much work. Like I'm scrimming, I'm out to like I get off at like 10 or 11. And I'm talking to my dad and my friends. I'm like, okay, so like they want me here. Like I need to figure this out. I need to do this or that. I do all this fucking work, and then they offer me less than what I was currently doing on YouTube. And I reach back out to them, and I'm like, guys, how the fuck are you going to come to me? God. I was so mad. Because, like, dude, like, I had to rage quit a scrim one. Like, I only rage quit one scrim. Greetings. And I talked to my team about it. It was against Chicken Contendies. And it was the day that I was like getting ready for this call. I had streamed all day, and I sat my team down like, look, guys, like I'm sorry. Like here's what I have going on tonight. Like here's what's going on. And like shout out IC and all the boys. Like they were super understanding. They're like, look, dude, it's good. Like you can just take your night. Like we've been working hard. We've been playing so well. Like, and I just leveled with them. I was like, dude, I'm trying to figure this out. And then a couple months later, that's when Facebook realized, okay, we're going to do our contracts non-exclusive, and those were good deals. I'm pissed I didn't get one. I would have loved to have. Are you, dude? Like $100,000 a year to not stream exclusive? They were paying like $8,300. There were a couple Overwatch streamers who got one. I know Jane had one at one point. I'm not sure what his deal was. I think his was exclusive. Was it not? Am I crazy? Or was it non-exclusive?
I don't know if it was exclusive or not, but that's only where Jane streamed for a while. Yeah.
So I think it was, and he definitely would have gotten the bag. But then they ended up just deciding to buy Mixer, and because like there was a big problem with Facebook gaming at the time in the streaming world. It didn't have the technology, but it had the users, and Mixer had the technology but didn't have the users. You cannot get into social media in this era with the established platforms. It's too difficult. It's too difficult to generate users. It's really damn hard to do. And so that's what that buy ended up happening. And then Microsoft was like, you know what? We're not going to get in the streaming space. We're shutting it down. And that was crazy story. So I just went on a massive random.
No. I mean that's what podcasts do. So
yeah. Jesus. So that was one of my crazier stories. Like when playing with like getting into contenders and trying to deal with all that shit. Like trying to do that by myself. I haven't really. I never told anybody that.
I never really tracked like the whole like streaming scene all that much at the time. So I was just like, oh yeah, Samito, this is a Hanzo dude. Like he just hits all the Hanzo shots. I have this distinct memory on Busan Mecha Base, and you just held the entire lobby hostage, man. I remember scrimmaging. I was like, dude, I freaking hate this guy so much.
I probably went high left, didn't I, on Catwalk?
Yeah,
on Mecha Base.
Yeah. It was just annoying. You just hit every single freaking headshot. But yeah, those were some tough days, man. Like I could tell you some stories, man, from like back with Uprising and like how do you have an academy team that has like the 7th or 8th worst roster in the region, kind of a thing. Like, geez, but dude, those were stressful days, because that was like one of those days where it's like the burnout is real. We talk about like content creation stuff, and I wasn't really doing much content at the time. I was streaming like once or twice a week, but it was like I was working like 90-hour weeks. We were doing the 4-hour scrims. I was doing like 4 or 5 hours of like VOD review prep, and then 1 or 2 hours of VOD review, and then 1 or 2 hours studying afterwards. And then obviously like when the results, like I think the biggest thing, and you can probably relate with this, burnout kicks in not necessarily when you work the hardest, but when you work the hardest without any results, no matter what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
That kicks you.
And
that kicks you.
It's tough, especially like in a like the Overwatch, like the scene was dark back then too. Like that was when like hope started to like people like reality started to set in a little bit, where it's like, okay, this might not like.
Well, academy teams started dropping.
Yeah, and that's when it really sucked. And it was like who dropped first? I forget who it was. It was
it might have been
NRG, right?
Maybe NRG or Mayhem Academy, maybe.
Mayhem Academy was the first to go. You're right. Oh my god, I remember that.
Yeah,
Jesus
yeah.
Christ. We actually
So
we
Mayhem.
talked about potentially bringing it back with like me and Jay on the roster at one point. That would have been
Oh,
hilarious. That
really?
would have been
That would
hilarious.
have been
That
a
would have been
total clown
so
fiesta.
fucking funny. And
And then
honestly,
it might have
that
been
could have
Glads.
worked. We could have played. Glads left after they get the VOD Steelers, right?
Yeah, dude. Oh, you knew about that. You knew about that. Or did I tell you
No.
about
You
that? I
told me
told you
about
about
that.
that.
You told me
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, honestly, that would have worked. If there's any iteration of Mayhem Academy that would have worked, that probably would have been the one.
Yeah.
Because you guys would have it would have been a content team, like Overwatch kind of a thing, but like done proper.
Yeah.
That would have done well.
And we could have played too, like like the bar, like shit. The fact that even last year when whether it was on SRP check or our World Cup team, which was fucking hilarious, by the way. Oh my god, that shit was so fun. I wanted that Vegas game. Let me tell you, dude. Like, I felt bad for them because like
Yeah, I remember the video I did at it where it's somewhere in my.
Oh, you reviewed it. That's right.
I reviewed it. Y'all unironically played pretty well. I will say.
did.
I could tell the Samito shot calling and was kicking in here. I'm looking at it right now. I mean, you got Clone Man too, who's like
He
he's
just
watched
knows.
this all
We
get
were
out, but
playing
he's been
Goats
around.
Light. We were playing Goats
Yeah.
Light. Like nothing in Overwatch 2, in my opinion, as much shit as I gave Goats for not being fun at having DPS. That might have been, and you tell me if I'm wrong. I know some of the MOBAs out there have like crazy skill ceilings, right? Goats, for all the shit that I give it, undoubtedly was the hardest, highest skill ceiling fucking comp or like I've ever played in any game. The shit that you had to react to instantaneously, how fights could turn, like it was unbelievable how difficult that was to play.
It was two things going for it. One was that there was mechanical expression, but there wasn't as much obvious mechanical expression. So like as like a tier 3, tier 2, even a tier 1 DPS player, you're not allowed to cover your positioning or CD sends by hitting a shot. You had to set up correctly. Like there was no mechanical cover up. And then in addition to that, like the meta was meta for so long, and people are going to solve the meta. And then they're going to solve the solving, and they're going to solve the solving of the solving, right? And like so, like when something sticks around that long, it's going to get. I mean, we saw this to an extent with Sombra. We saw this with even like in 2022 with like Atlanta Rain, the Winds and Sombra Tracer on a Brig, like the evolution and the understanding of that composition as it went because it lasted so long. Yeah, like crazy strategical depth. I might have been one of the few coaches that like I've always been like kind of a hot take. Like I was not a huge Goats fan even as a coach because it did have a lot of strategic depth. It was just so freaking boring to watch.
Yeah.
At least for long, 4-hour blocks for 6 days a week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it had crazy strategical depth for sure. And I actually think it in many ways helped level up my understanding of the game because it helped me to understand that like no matter how brawly the comp, angles and space still matters. Like what made Shock different than so many other comps? It's Sinatra on the angles.
Yeah,
it's
every
Choi
time.
on the high ground.
He was so aggressive on the angles. And then Choi, they were the first team. And shout out to Krusty. I don't know if you remembered this swap where everyone was like grav bombing and like initiating with Diva Bomb. They were the team that figured out, hey, we're not going to bomb engage. We're going to save bomb as a defensive when they grav. And I remember Fragon breaking that down. And they just started winning.
You'd pin.
Yeah.
Because you'd pin grav. You'd pin grav and you'd kill somebody in grav, but you
yeah.
can't pin grav if there's a Diva Bomb sitting in the grav.
Yeah,
right.
Pretty much. And it would be like an extra defensive, and you just couldn't follow up on grav, and then people just didn't know what to do. So that was a crazy shift I remember happening, having to learn and think. And we had to work on this against Wave Check, who we beat 3-2. And I remember on map 5, there's probably one of the most cursed screenshots in Overwatch history. There is a end game card, which they should bring back, by the way. I loved that phase of the game.
I was just thinking about that yesterday.
Yeah, they should bring that back. There was an end game card where I had 100% kill participation on Brig on map 5 on Liege. It was one. I looked at the card and I was like, wait a minute. Like and my Brig came so far, and this is why people. It was. I remember there was this tweet, and you'll get a kick out of this, where I was like leading the charge on the Brig hate. Leading the charge. I had to fight a war, 1v 10 million against the Moira players against my war on Moira. That was pretty funny too. I was right. I stand by being right on that, by the way.
No, you were right.
Don't tell the forums that. Jesus Christ, they hated me. They accused me of doxing kids for reading forum threads. I got
Wait, really?
Dude, I went and reacted to the forums and was just like reading forum threads. And the kids there hated me so much that they made up that somebody got doxed and that I was causing physical harm to people by reading the forum threads, and they just were going around saying this. It got so bad, the community manager had to message me and was like, yo, like, can you stop doing this? And I was like,
oh my gosh, people are unhinged. But yeah, continue. Sorry.
I was like, what the fuck? Yeah, it's a crazy side tangent there, but I forget where I was going about with Brig.
Kill participation.
Kill participation.
You're anti-Brig Brigade.
Oh yeah. It's you know, there was one guy who tweeted me and was like, if Brig is so broken, why don't you do an unranked GM with her then? And everyone was like, he just did unranked to contenders. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, what more do you want? What more do you want, Twitter? What more do you want?
Oh my!
And this is why Twitter is just good for engagement for me. I was hoping it would be different when Elon bought it, but then I learned a valuable I shouldn't say I learned a valuable lesson. I should say I was reminded of something that I learned from being back on like the Mindplex forums. Yeah. You don't go on forums or the internet to find nuanced, intelligent takes. It is always, no matter where it is, going to be troll, cesspool.
It's just people, man.
It's just people trolling.
People are crazy.
It's just, and you know, the internet anonymity is something that you'll never be able to solve. And I guess
I had a funny interaction. I did some posts the other day about like one-sided matches and like
I did see that thumbnail. I did see that.
So it was the Force 50-50. Well, it was a few weeks because I did a Twitter thread and I was like, oh, I should make a video about this. So anyway, I did some like Force 50-50 discussion, and long story short, this guy like talks about like, oh yeah, I'm in like gold whatever, and there's like I win 50%, I lose 50%, and bad teammates and whatever. And I'm like being super respectful, like, hey, I feel like the response we're spreading because it is a common myth that needs to be dispelled. You're 50-50 because the matchmaker is really good at finding your actual rank. And he's like, yeah, but my teammates are bad. I'm like, well, you know, this is kind of like why. And I'm being like, I'm not trying to like dismiss this guy's argument. Well, I forget what he said. He like flies off the lid, like flies, like totally like goes ape crap insane, like just, and then blocks me. I'm like, all right, that's I guess that's how we're doing it here. So, dude, and that happens all the time. Like, you know, it's like, you know, I'll have, because I'm like you. Basically, what I do is I'm like, I don't sit here and have arguments with Twitter, but you use those arguments as like a way to educate. Hey, this is a cool thing, like as like a springboard to talk about stuff, and then you know, people go off the like, because you've gone after their little. Their
echo
place.
Chamber. Yeah, their happy place.
Their echo chamber, right.
And,
so
and that's kind of what it is. I love arguing on Twitter. I love it. Mostly because like it helps me stay sharp. You know, like, and I don't want to dismiss people. A lot of people see me like arguing Twitter, like, you're so toxic, you think you're better than everyone else. Yeah. Like, buddy, if I thought I was better than everyone else, I wouldn't be fucking talking to you. So listen, you want to give me shit, do it for the right reason. That's all I'm saying. You know, and that's kind of my approach, because it keeps me sharp, and I don't want to. I'm concerned about the kind of man I'll be if I just start dismissing people. That's how I become complacent, and I'm more afraid of becoming complacent than I am of being wrong about something. That's what scares the shit out of me the most. It's like, you know, when I stop moving, that's what I want to be wary about, and you know, that's just kind of my mentality, I guess. But I guess segueing a little bit here. Oh, my brain farted again. It was not wave respawns I wanted to ask you about. There was something else. What?
Season 9, wave respawns.
I guess we can talk about Season 9. I'm probably going to make a video about this. You know, I think it's time to maybe walk that back a little bit. I
just think we need to talk about like what was the thing that they initially did. And so they said, I'm not going to put words in their mouth, but it was specifically like dealing, like consistency. It was like it really was dealing with burst damage and dealing with burst healing.
Yeah.
And obviously the burst healing one was silly because you can just adjust the healing, right? Like that kind of goes without saying. But the burst damage one was, you know, how do we? I will say this about Season 9. I will say this about Season 9. I could see a world here. Maybe I'm not thinking this all the way through, where they just make all the normal breakpoints of pre-Season 9, but with all the health pools of Season 9. You kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Adjust bring the breakpoints back in line. But then what's the point of the season?
But the reason is that because 250 HP is easier to tweak than 200 HP. You kind of see what I'm saying? Because going from 250 to 225 to 275 is like less of a percentage increase than 200 to 225 or 175. You kind of see what I'm saying? Yeah. So like it gives you extra knobs to tweak, which okay, sure. But I'm with you on that one, where it's like initially like we talk about like burst damage, and I've asked them this, and I hope that they talk about it a little bit more, because it's like what breakpoints are we wanting to bring back and what are not? I don't have a problem necessarily with them going, okay, we thought that these one shots would be bad, but actually they're just fundamental to character design. We're going to leave them as is. But like, which ones get the pass and which ones don't? How come Reinhardt Fire Strike doesn't match that criteria? You know, why does that one get the criteria? You know, and so it's like there just needs to be like some consistency of thought about like what breakpoints are allowed to and what are not, because there doesn't seem to be a very clear idea of which ones and why.
It's picking
it just
favorites.
seems a little random.
It felt like to me.
It is.
And
yeah,
Hanzo is the prime example of that, in my opinion. I don't touch the character anymore. Like, and granted, I'm not what I was on him. I'm not claiming to be like that good at him anymore. Like, I don't play him. I like playing Mei way more. I think she's way more in tune with this game, especially because she can survive the super tank. But like, even Mei's really good right now. Like, she's kind of meta, is what people are saying. It's like, it's not even because she's better at dealing damage than the other DPS. It's just because she can live on the angle when the super tank dives her, right? And like, that's kind of why she's so good. And I think
people don't know how to play Mei as well.
Yeah, they do. They don't realize how good she is.
I think Mei falls into the Pharah category. I picked Mei in like season 4 or 5 just because I wanted to see how she felt in Overwatch 2. And I played her like I coached Backbone essentially. And when the first season of Overwatch League in Overwatch 2. And, you know, just like you said, just control angle, dual DPS. You have this crazy self-sustain. Just basically playing like sniper control mid-range angle Mei. And I was like, Masters 3, and my mechanics are garbage. Like, I'm so washed.
And
it
the freeze was good then, too. It's not as good now from a damage perspective because they didn't. It really is. It was really good.
Her ult is still cheeks, you know, but like the reason people don't know, like, think Mei's bad is because they don't know how to play Mei. Like, they just like freeze the tank or freeze the Ryan shield and stand on me and like, bro, like, what are you doing? Like, but yeah, I think Mei's a good example of another one who she has her breakpoints back, you know, so it's like, okay, so I guess Mei's allowed to have her 2-shot.
She doesn't have it on Tracer. The 1-shot on Tracer was so good. I miss it so much, but go ahead.
Yeah. But anyway, it's really hard to like, I think like, I hope the developers, it's the same thing with the tank thing where it's like, I understand like what you're trying to do and like, but like, what are we trying to accomplish here? Like, well, like in the meantime, like, what are we trying to experiment with? Like, is it just finding which heroes deserve the breakpoints and which don't? But it just seems so random. It really does seem so random. And I think you made a great point about the Coalescence versus Dragon Strike.
Yeah.
Like, that's a great example of and Cole is still good even without like having that much lethal damage. Dragon Strike isn't without the lethal damage.
It's so bad. And there's so many things they could do too. Sorry to cut you off, but I'll let you finish.
No. I mean, that was basically it.
And so that's kind of my problem with it, where it's like, look, it's been 3 seasons now. I think that it's been enough time to where we can say, okay, like, hey, it's been enough time to like bring back some of the breakpoints that probably like are needed. Dragon Strike needs it. They sped it up, which actually made it worse, in my opinion. Like, I actually think Dragon is worse now because I would rather.
I think they should have done both.
Yeah.
I think they should have done both.
Yeah.
I think they should have made the duration last a little longer and make it go a little faster.
That would have been fine.
I can get. But yeah.
Yeah, because you can't kill. Like, I grabbed Dragon Azaria, she just lived.
Yeah.
Like, she got naded, I guess, but like, I'm still shooting her, but I don't do headshot damage anymore either. So it's like. You know, I don't know. I think there's a lot of heroes that kind of just been left behind on that, and I'm just kind of sitting there. And you know what else we don't talk about? DPS heroes did not get ammo mag size compensation either. So, like, you're running out of ammo.
Oh, I didn't think about that. You're right.
You're running out of ammo more, too. Like, on a hero like Sombra, it's, like, really, really hard to do it. And, like, you know, 225 characters, you know, you can kind of kill. But, like, you run out of ammo on Sombra. Soldier did get that mag increase to, like, 30 a long time ago. But, like, you know, he's so bad into things like D.Va. So it's like, you know, as a DPS player, like, I find myself reloading before kills way more often than I used to before. And again, I'm not trying to sit here and be like, see, this is fucking horrible. Like, you know, but like, there's definitely like some things that could have been thought about to answer.
It's a big change. It was a big change, and it was aggressive change and something we never would have seen in Overwatch 1. And it was one that I was definitely skeptical of. And I think we've kind of seen since then that, like, okay, you know, is the vision that we had with this update still like intact? Because like we could look at like the heal passive and be like, yeah, that was great. Everyone loves the heal passive. Nice job. I was wrong with that one. I don't know what your stance was on it, but I thought for sure that like, well, no, I'm talking about like the out of combat heal passive specifically.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think it solved the issues, but I think it aged really well, and I'm curious how it'd play in OpenQ. But go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, basically my take was like, oh no, it's gonna make flankers too OP. But in the implementation, I think it was like pretty balanced, and it actually helped a lot of non-flankers because you could actually take a flank as Hanzo and not need a pocket all the
Yeah.
time. But anyway, long story short, like I think you need to constantly like reevaluate the spirit of like what those changes were, and then obviously, like you said, also the unintended consequences of like, oh hey, this ult is bad now because this ult doesn't benefit from having a larger projectile size, right? So like, and I mean, I literally when they actually went live, I thought that they really missed the mark because I remember on stream, it actually might have been in Irvine at the Blizzard facility. We did some streams there. I think I went down a list of every single ability that didn't benefit from the projectile thing, that didn't get buffed. And there was a long list of abilities
What
that
were
got
some of them?
forgotten. Charge, Fire
They
Strike
did
was
fix
forgotten
charge.
as well. They
fixed
did
charge,
fix
yeah.
a lot of these. Mayfreeze, which was like,
She
whatever.
still has not been compensated, by the way, from a
I
damage
think.
perspective.
Oh, really? I think Torb Hammer.
Yeah, come on, they got to get Torp Hammer. Come on, guys.
I think Bash and Grenade, if I remember correctly. Shoot, Dash was a big one. You can literally go almost through every single character and like, Junkrat Trap. I think it was Winston Alt Fire.
Yeah.
Winston landing damage.
They did
Winston
compensate
Primal.
that, I
And
think.
they've done these things over time, but it was like it just felt like a major oversight that this update goes live. And I think I saw your tweet about like why was Season 9 so well received, and it's because of what was played.
Yeah, it was dive. Yeah, the
dive.
Like it was.
Dive
we come out of
Doomslam,
the season 7, season 8 metas, like from like arguably a worse version of Double Shield, in like a worse to play, less fun. DPS queue times were instant in season 7. Instant. That never happened, even in Double Shield in Overwatch 1. Right? You never saw that happen. Then to the Malga meta. So when you go from those two metas to like a Ball, Lucio, Zen, Dive, or guess what? There's no bailout abilities. Every fight is a brawl in a way where it's like, you listen, like it's a duel. Like it's like that meta was a true shooter game meta, right? It was like it didn't have the MOBA elements, and so like,
I hate when people. I hate when people are like, they see that kind of stuff and we'll still gaslight ourselves and pretend that like we shouldn't be playing a little bit of favorites here with our Overwatch metas.
Dive's always going to be received well. I'm not saying there shouldn't be other stuff that can get
played.
played.
I wouldn't even say dive. I would say it's like certain heroes, like Ryan. Ryan is tough.
Honest.
It's hard to kill, but Ashe is consistent. Ryan is consistent. Anna, I know some people don't like Anna, but you and I both know that.
Well, the Hog players can shut up,
yeah. So, I think when there's like, generally higher skill ceiling or higher skill floor characters, the meta generally feels a little bit better overall because you could still play the other characters. Because if you mess up as a Tracer, a Torb's going to kill you.
Yeah.
If you mess up as a Ball, the Roadhog's going to kill you.
Yeah.
But if it's Roadhog or Malga's meta, there is no real margin for error because those characters are already easier to play or at least easier to pick up immediately.
Yeah.
And then now you just anybody
yeah.
can dominate with them.
Yeah,
really,
and that's and I think this kind of goes back to what you talked about. It's like, hey, while we're here, let's learn what we can, right? And I think that's one of the easiest lessons. That's one of the easiest lessons you can learn about like the type of gameplay that you should encourage. And to be fair, I want to give them credit. Everybody says I always give them
try
shit.
stuff.
I want to give them credit.
Stuff.
I think some of the stuff they've been trying, it's crazy because I actually think they're doing a great job with characters that aren't in the tank role. Like I think the Life Weaver change and the direction they're taking him about like being able to cycle to his damage more is way more fun, makes him better, and is less frustrating to play against than like the Life Grip heal spam across the map, which is what it was in season 7.
Totally 100%
they got
agreed.
that. They got that one right. The Sogs changes with the spread is something you and I have been asking for since season 2 when they first changed her, and I think they missed the mark on that.
Dude, I've been asking for that Sojourn change since Alpha. We were in that Overwatch League Discord, and I'm like, guys, this character is so railgun heavy. Her primary fire is not that good. This is going to be wildly. I mean, she was wild. She was, I think, probably top 3 most OP characters ever in Overwatch history. I think initial release Brig and maybe like the Valkyrie Mercy, somewhere in there, right? Yeah. But I mean, she just, and I was like, guys, we have a vertical soldier here. Let's do something with that. And it took him 2.5 years.
Yeah,
so.
There's a lot of turmoil in the team too, right? Like you see a lot of things change, and hopefully, I'm kind of waiting to see. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I lost a lot of faith when they came out and said, hey, like this was our goal with the tank changes. For me, that was a bit of a tipping point where
Oh,
like,
I agree.
how can
I
you
agree.
come out and say that, guys? Like you can't convince me that you're actively playing and understand the game here when you've like literally made D.Va. I don't care. And you know what? I don't care what her
Oh, the
stats
Matrix
say.
changed when they went from
Yeah,
3.5.
it's
It's
just
like
guys, come on. Come on.
I
They
think
should know
that's
this.
I think there's like where like there's like two ways that I see the game. You can have it's your game philosophy and then your balance or your understanding of heroes. Let's put it that way. So you can let's say that you and I have a differing opinion than the Overwatch 2 developers about the state of tank. I made a video about this where I think maybe the development has looked at like the queue times, the numbers, and 5v5 as a whole and decided like, okay, 5v5, it's better for the game's health for the tanks to be OP. It's just better for the game's health. I don't know if that's the case.
I think that is the case. I think that's like kind of how 5v5 has to work.
Sure. So that's their philosophy with tank. Okay, so then how do we want to implement that? Like we've all played versus raid boss Winstons. We've all played versus raid boss Divas. I'd 10 times rather play versus the Winston because there's ways that I can outplay him and it basically requires him to execute well. And then that's where I think that was the worst part about the tank patch for me. It wasn't the fact that they had buffed all the tanks necessarily, because that's just maybe a philosophical difference. And that's where maybe you and I both can learn, and I've changed my opinions. And maybe they're wrong, maybe we're wrong. You know, we could talk that. But you can't then go buff Matrix. Like, of all the things to buff, you don't buff Matrix at 3.5, because that's not what she needs, right? I forget they did something else with that as well. There was a couple other changes like that were just kind of like tone deaf about like
to D.Va or to like any.
No, just to the tank role. Like I think one of them might have been like Reinhardt gets an extra 200 or 300 shield or something like that. And I'm like,
the regen rate was faster, yeah.
Right, and it's just like it's no, he was straight from, because it was like 1,400 shield.
You're right. It was 1,600. They just gave him
200 shield, and I'm like, oh, come on, like yes, it's gonna make Ryan stronger, but in like the least interesting and fun way for the character, playing versus the character, playing as a character, and that's kind of where like I've been, I think, disappointed. I think at times, because it's like we could have a different philosophical decision about the game, but I do think that like Matrix, shield, and so on, and like surely there's something else that character needs. And I had this talk with Alec, the interview with Ball, and I'm like, hey, I appreciate like the adaptive shields and all these things, but like Ball still gets rolled by Sombra Roadhog. So like what's, if we're gonna like, could we not, and I think that those things have just like, I don't want to say never have been addressed, but almost never have been addressed. And I think one of the first times that we've actually seen that was actually in the recent director's take, where they were talking about like beam damage to D.Va. I don't know if you saw that. And I was like, hey, that's at least, okay, that's at least interesting. That's at least addressing a weakness so that we can, okay, shift some of the power here, shift some of the power there. But it just seems like a lot of these balance changes don't seem to like understand what the character struggles with. And it just kind of like gives them 3 value.
Yeah.
You know me. Brainless mitigation. I hate
brainless,
that.
you hate that. That's your thing. I personally, like, I think that it's something that has to be accepted that you can't solve. Because ultimately, when you start to get into that, like, okay, well, you're just taking away from the experience from the other player. And that's why I think it's fundamentally flawed. Because, like, why should I, as Echo, do less beam damage to a D.Va? Like, that's supposed to be a matchup that like is one of the only matchups that you have an advantage into, right? I just think there's too much emphasis on that one player, and that's
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
But
for me with beam damage, it's more like giving the Matrix the ability to do something versus the beam damage, so that we can shift some of the armor elsewhere. It's like if we gave Ball counterplay to CC, skillful counterplay to CC, then we can legitimately chunk his adaptive shields by 400, so that a Curie Lucio comp could actually kill a Ball.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
I just don't see the way to do it. Is this problem?
I understand that. Like, but it's like, again, it's like what makes Winston Sigma fun to play versus, even when they're a little bit overtuned, not fun to play versus, but like more honest,
less annoying, the more honest.
It's because they have to outplay you, right? They have more opportunity to outplay you because they're OP, right? They're just tanks, right? But they still have to hit the bubble. They still have to hit the shield. They still have to hit the shots, the landing, and and so like a lot of these things, it's like they don't have to make those choices, right? And I think that's where like the frustration comes from. So, I think I said, like I said, fundamental flaws of the format aside, we should be experimenting more, I think, with giving these tanks designs like that.
PTR?
Do
we bring back PTR?
I've asked for it. I've asked for experimental. I've asked for like utilizing the like increased XP in experimental, like so you're motivating people to play. I mean, we've seen a lot of like quick play hack stuff. We've seen these content creator patches. We've seen stuff like Mirror Watch and so on, where they may or may not be like trying stuff. But I agree with you. I think that you have to have a larger sample size, and you have to have a larger sample size more consistently.
Yeah, and to give them credit, like it is like, and this is where like. I guess when I was reviewing this last patch, I think this is what I can do better too. Because like at the end of the day, you can't just point the finger at everybody else every day, right? It's like, when I'm looking at the DB changes, I'm like, oh, this doesn't solve it. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, maybe like this just can't. Maybe like I need to accept like this is just what this has to be. And my problem isn't with like the balance changes themselves, but like more so accepting that this is what the philosophy and direction has to be. And so that was kind of a realization that I think I came to. This week where I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Am I actually mad about the balance here? Or like, let's separate. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is where like the same thing I talked about earlier where, I was kind of like, where somebody was like, oh, well, CarQ's just like stealing people's videos for content. Where I was like, okay, let me take a step back here and like really break this thought down in my head. Like, is that actually what's going on? And the answer I came to was no. And so, I think I kind of have to do the same thing here. But I will say I do think that it's crazy because I think they've done a good job with like a lot of DPS heroes and stuff. I don't think that's the issue, and even supports like direction. It's just like I think the tanks are kind of unsolvable in the meantime. But I think that we're kind of in wait and see mode. Is the playtest for 6v6 supposed to be next season or is it the season after?
I have no idea. I honestly can't remember. Maybe somebody in chat can elaborate. I did. I don't know if you saw. I did the whole like the 6v6 code. For like I think almost 30 hours. Like we spent like a week and a half, nothing but.
I saw your message about it.
Yeah, I've got a video cooking up for it right now. I even did a workshop code variation with post season 9 because if they don't, I'm not want to assume that they're going to revert season 9 just because I want to actually like the quality of the test, and it was so interesting, like really really interesting. I felt like I learned a lot about the game and game design and tank design support, and it was fun. It was fun. I will say my thoughts on space with 66 remain the same. And my thoughts on, I think the best way of putting this, my thoughts on tank design remain the same. My thoughts on hero design remain the same. There are more heroes that work in the 66 format. Let's put it that way. But there are still some outliers. Mm-hmm. We did some purposefully kind of trolly tank combos at like the plat diamond level, just because I did hard calming GM top 500 pugs that I was playing support in, and then I was just playing off meta characters I was good at, like the diamond level, just like no purposely I said no comms, no nothing, pick whatever. And I'm not gonna lie with you, playing Roadhog Zarya on Midtown first point attack was pretty crappy. Right? And so so there's still some pain points here. Where like characters like Roadhog were like it felt actually in some ways even easier to shut down.
He probably is. He probably is easier to shut down.
The one thing was for sure though is I will say this is that counter picking was so much worse.
What do you mean?
So much harder to counter pick.
I get what you mean.
Counter picking tank. Yeah, it's just so much harder. Like even if you do have a Winston Roadhog comp, counterpicking the Winston is not near as easy because there's now that additional guy that's going to punish your counter pick. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I think I came away with like a lot of like little details it was fun.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the video.
But I will say this. Okay, so hot take. I just remembered one thing. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you say this or whatever. I will say Widowmaker was not better. She was not better in 66.
What do you mean define better? Like as in stronger or like
to play versus Widowmaker? To play versus Widowmaker. So there were two situations we found ourselves in, and we tried this a lot. Attack Widow, like when you didn't have space, so easy to shut her down. So easy to shut her down. It felt great. I loved just seeing her have zero space whatsoever. But defense Widowmaker, so I was playing Root CC6 attack on second point, and they had a Widow in defense. I had nowhere to go, because she still controls the same sightlines. And what they would do is they'd have like a Sigma or Diva sit on that angle where I'd try to like flank at her, and I couldn't get to her. So it reminded me of like those double sniper Havana first points. You remember where it's like, dude, I need to get to this freaking Hydrant guy in the back line, and I cannot get to him.
Can't get there.
So there's basically the deal there is like there were still some hero designs that just suck in Overwatch, period.
I'm a huge Widow hater. I think she's the most broken DPS in the game because you could be 3-3 in the back line and still be the highest priority in the lobby. There's no other hero that's the case for.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
I will say I'm nervous about ruining her identity. I always try to avoid this, right? Like even for the heroes, because I know my biases and I want to try to be fair. But when you break this down, like this is where I'm starting to lean too. If you look at any other sniper in any video game ever, look at Call of Duty snipers, for example, how they're balanced. Limited mobility, low fire rate, hard time to scope in, and a glint. And Widow has SMG options. Not great, but it's still there.
Yeah.
Great mobility, insane sightline, no bullet drop. The fall off range just doesn't matter. The fall off range does not matter. It doesn't matter.
Not realistically usually. Yeah.
And especially with 225 heroes now too, right? You know, it's like it's even like
this breakpoint's even easier. Yeah.
So it's just like, you know, I would like to see them do something to Widow to bring her more in line with what a real sniper should be without destroying the, like, whether it be, I think the easiest way to do that to let her keep her identity, it's going to piss me off. I want to destroy her identity so bad. Like they did it to Hanzo, like, but he's kind of back now, but like, you know, it is maybe when she's grappling, she takes damage, it cancels, something like that, where it's like, does this hero need, were the supports nerfed? Like, were a lot of the support abilities like still burst heal, or did they revert those?
No, so that was one thing I can talk a little bit. I had forgotten. Sustain Watch was not good.
Oh, I thought 2 tanks were oppressive.
Right. No, it was not good. Like, you know, you take away Orisa shield, you nerf BAP or Brig just a little bit, and men, like, even without a significantly nerfed BAP Brig, I think it would have been a lot weaker. Like, pretty consistently, we found that dive characters were good. Yeah. Dive characters were really good. And actually, poke characters were really quite bad. Now, there were a couple of minor balance things that definitely affected that. Like, I don't know how... You know, but for the most part, we even on poke maps, dive was still better.
Oh, really?
Like, so that was, we did a lot of like double sniper in Havana. Nope. Dive beats it. Dive beats it most of the time. Yeah, you set up the ball.
Were packs nerfed and like BAP, like were all those things?
A little bit, yeah. A little bit of those things were nerfs. But this was in postseason 9 too, so like, you know, slightly tankier health pools didn't matter, because that was a concern. Because when I talked with the development team, shout out to those guys, they were like, well, we tried it, we felt like the sustain was too big, so we wanted to like have the all smaller health pools. But then I tried the preseason 9, and you know, with the larger hitboxes, everything was one-shotting everything.
Oh yeah, everything was exploding out.
It was, and that, if that's your cup of tea, sure. But I was like, man, this doesn't even feel like old Overwatch. So I was like, all right, can you rework the code to be like the larger health pools? And like, well, yeah, but we just feel like things aren't going to die. Not my experience. And we played like 20 hours on that code, and all comps, all ranks, stuff freaking died. Sustain was bad. Double shield, we'd even try double shield. We ran like, heal passive was a pair down passive. I think only that.
Just the global regen, right?
Just a global regen, right? We tried like Rhine, Sig, Tor, Bat Brig. Didn't work. It didn't work. You just died. You died. And it was great. I mean, it was like it was, you know, honest Overwatch was pretty darn good. You know, we played some Winston Zarya, played some Ryan Diva, Ryan Zarya. We played some Sigma comps, but no, it was good Overwatch. Where was I? Where were we talking about this with Widowmaker? Oh yeah, Widowmaker. No, it's fine. The thing with Widowmaker, I think, is like the problem with all your solutions, while they definitely provide like fair counterplay, they make the character so hit or miss, more so than she already is, right? Like, can you imagine like a bronze Widowmaker with all those things?
Oh, you can't play the hero. I think bronze Widows already can't play the character, which kind of sucks.
Oh, that's true. But the idea is that, like, it's like every fix that I hear from Widowmaker is like actively making her a significantly worse character, which everyone's like, yes, good, that's great, right? Kind of like the whole Roadhog mindset, right? But then it's like, okay, well then what do you want when your guy picks Widowmaker? Yeah. Now what? What happens when they go Tracer? Like, it's already hard enough as it is if the situation isn't right. Like, you go Sombra, you just die. If they go Ball, you just die 99% of the time in rank. Yeah. So it's like, but then I don't know what the solution is. Like, how do you make Widow, like, how do you take away her one shot and or give more counterplay to her one shot without actively making her a garbage, useless hero? And that's where it's like, I love how she looks. She's sleek. She's cool. She's got this cool storyline, but she's just a terribly designed hero.
Yeah.
And
no way
there's
to
a
do
few
it.
characters like that. I don't know what you do. I don't know what you do with Roadhog. I don't know what you do with Widowmaker. I think those are the two out of all the characters, even Bastion. I think Roadhog and Widow are the two characters that I
Even
really
Brig
don't
too.
know what you
Even
do.
Brig
Yeah,
too. Like you, like
Brig's done well in
those are
Overwatch
easier.
too.
Those are
Brig has
easier
done well in
heroes
Overwatch too.
to address, but like because their
Agree.
identities like are fine. It's just I think some of the implementations for them should have been looked at. But like
Yeah.
I don't have a good solution to Widow. You don't. It's
I
like
don't
you
either.
kind of have to pick and choose. It's the same for Hog. My solution for Hog is open queue. Like he's just an open queue hero is the answer. But we're probably not going to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I'm excited to see that video. We've rambled for a while, so I'll let you go here in a minute. About an hour and a half. That was a good little powwow. I appreciate you coming on. It was definitely a little bit unorganized, but that's kind of we just it's raw talk. We come on, we speak, and we do our thing. So I'm excited to see what happens for I guess this fall into the 6v6 test. I'm glad that you see some optimism. I'm excited for all I've really wanted. I think there was a lot of misinformation going around about the two formats, and that's what really irritated me the most. I was like, all right, guys, like let's call this what it actually is, and I think that's what really sent me. Because I'm like, listen, this isn't going to help anybody because we're just going to end up where we were with tanks last season if we can't look this in the eye for what it is. So I'm very excited for the wool to get pulled off a lot of people's eyes, and that that guy just died. Right now I'm doing so much. Like I had a game where my tank had 10,000 damage and 4 limbs, and we were winning. Like I was like, dude, like there's so much meaningless damage going on in just exchange, because there's 2 raid bosses fighting. They're not going to be able to kill each other, so they're just going to sit there butting heads like 2 bulls all day. It's like, well, right. So I'm excited to see the experiments. I hope it goes well for them and for the community as well. And dude, great talk today. We got a lot of subjects covered about content creation, the pro experience, a lot of things. It's always a good time having you on.
It's good. You too.
I'm looking forward to seeing
that
I'll
video.
See you
tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah, we'll see. I think we stayed away from like a lot of the subjects we'll talk about tomorrow, which is good. So yeah. Any closing words that you want to say to the people or what?
No, man. No, appreciate it. Looking forward to the next one.
Hell yeah, dude. I appreciate your time as always. And thanks for coming on.
Cheers, brother.
All right. Sign off, dog. Peace out, man. Oh my goodness. What a good show that was.